name is Angel James. I am from Wadsworth, Ohio. I have 2.5 years. My sobriety date is 10/29/20. I'm in recovery from everything. Anything that gets me out of me, that's what I'm in recovery from. Today I get to be a mother. Today I get to be a sponsor. Today I get to be the daughter that I should have been all along. Today I get to be a significant other to my fiance. Today I also get to be a peer support. Going into my CDCA.
Very cool. Well, thanks so much for coming out and joining us. If you could start off by sharing a bit about your childhood.
So there was just a lot of separation. My dad would go to his spot, my mom would go to her room, and then I would just be doing whatever.
So pretty lonely existence.
Yeah.
And how was school impacted by kind of this loneliness?
So I was really outgoing. I always wanted to know how other families worked. I was very intrigued by other cultures, other people, other what makes them different from me, because I wanted to fit in. And so I fit in with this crowd and that crowd, and I fit in everywhere because we wear those masks when we're trying to fit in. So I kind of just had friends from all over. We'd go camping, I remember now, and I was just always had everybody was my friend. And I was a people pleaser for a long time.
So when you first started using, when was that, and what did it do for you?
So my first use was consumption of alcohol. Obviously, since I was the only child and I was out and allowed to do what I wanted, run around the streets, I hung out at the park a lot, and I hung out with older kids. And the older kids were drinking. So at age 11, I, went to a party, and when I drink, it's to oblivion. And I just remember parts of it, walking home, and of course that was my first consequence of alcohol. And the first memory I had for a long time, back from my childhood, I got into a car with 3 grown men and, was sexually assaulted at a hotel. And and instead of it stopping the drinking and seeing the negative outlook on it, it just it was just more to excess.
Yeah.
I was skipping school a lot in high school, and I was getting into a lot of fights, justifying it, I'm beating up bullies, but of course I had anger, all this built up anger and rage towards all these people, and I didn't know what to do with it. And so I was in fights a lot, so I got in trouble a lot. My mom took me from 9th grade, Elyria High, and put me into a Baptist school. Needless to say, I got pregnant at 15. And my dad had lost his job, and so I kind of was stuck with the choice to make. My parents gave me the choice: either you get married or you move to Alabama. And unfortunately, it was just a trailer, no running water, no electricity, and I'm a city girl, so I decided to get married. He was 21. And he had struggles with his own battles, but he was of partying age. And when you have a marriage certificate, you can go to the bar and drink. So that's what we did on the weekend. However, we were the only ones that had a house, so it was the party house. So everybody came to our house. And he was the drinker that drank and was out. So I was left with a baby and, all these men that were at the house of his friends that were partying. And, so I didn't really get a chance. I mean, every now and then, on the weekends, I did have a family friend, and, his mom kind of took over as a nana. So gave me just that little bit of still childhood to try to grow up. But I was very resentful during that whole marriage. He was very verbally abusive. And just, he was partying. And at the time, I didn't understand why I was so mad, but looking back, I couldn't use. I couldn't drink. I couldn't numb the pain. I felt that I deserved it more than he did. And so it was a very toxic relationship.
And how long did that last for?
So that lasted for 7 years. I had another kid with him. So I have an older daughter that I had. She is 22 now. And so she was my firstborn. And, when she was born, I felt finally somebody here loved me. because for the longest time I just didn't understand that anybody loved me. Like, how could somebody love me and hurt me like that? I mean, my parents tried the best they could, but like, they had to work. And, because we were middle class, they had to work, all the time. And, they had no idea what was going on because I didn't say anything. And so, but I did get my GED. And then at 19, I had my oldest son. He's 19 now. They both graduated, so I'm very proud of them. And my oldest daughter has my grandbaby that's 2. And then, I got my STNA and I got my nursing license. And then when I remember, like, we had the graduation party, and it was my time. Like, I went home. It was, like, the greatest day ever. I told him to pack his stuff and get out. And, like, I had arrived, basically. Unfortunately, when I kicked him out, I was going to the bars a lot after work. I moved in already because I'm codependent. I don't know how to be alone. So I move in a guy to kind of babysit. And I'm working as a nurse, and I'm buying him whatever he wants so he could sit there and watch the kids. Unfortunately, one day on the way home from work, I got hit by a drunk driver. A drunk driver hit 4 cars into me and then into the intersection, and so I have 4 vertebrae in my neck and 3 in my lower back, and I started on opiates. So I never really did hard drugs until my late 20s. And I had been a nurse for 3 years, and the epidemic had hit, but I had already been on pain pills for a year. And when that happened, like, they ripped them from me. Told me I was too young. Well, I worked in a nursing home. So, and at this point I was already addicted, and I had watched other nurses do it, so why not me? And so, yeah, I ended up stealing for a while. And then, of course, I was dating a guitar player and then married the singer of a band. Like, I think my marriage certificate and divorce papers were in the mail at the same time because, that's how sick we are.
Right.
Yeah, so, and then that marriage was like, started off in a lie. He had no idea that I had an opiate addiction. I hid it from everybody. And, I ended up getting pregnant. The first year was a fairy tale. And, I was like, oh, wow, finally, like, God showing me blessings, this and that. And I had my youngest daughter. She's 12 now. And then I had my son, like, shortly after. He's 11. And after my son came, though, like, everything changed. And I didn't even know what I had, like, gotten myself into. And, so at this time, he had found out that I was using, so he wanted to use too. So we're both using. So then I'm working, 18 hours back trying to steal meds from me and him. And, it was just not a lifestyle. We had 6 kids together. But when my son came, he just had some kind of I don't even know how to explain it. He told me that he could never break the mother bond that we had. And when he said that, I questioned him, and I'm like, well, wait, what are you talking about? He's like my other ones. I was able to take them from their mom, but I can't break your guys' bond. And we got into an argument, and the first argument, I got thrown through a 2nd-story bedroom window. His addiction had overtaken mine. If I didn't bring enough home, I, got beat. He started being mean to my children. He was very mean to his kids. I would always try to step in, try to protect them. However, like, then it, landed me getting, into a physical fight with them. And it was just very toxic. And then one day, I guess he was sharing with his boss, who was also addicted to meds and, opiates and stuff. And his boss is the one that called.
Wow.
Yeah. So after that, like, it was real quick down. Like, I mean, smacking bottom fast. I got reported. I lost my nursing license. My stepdad and my mom had separated. He had came to my house, told me he had stage 4 lung cancer. So I moved him into a house that already was a disarray. You know what I mean? And, like, chaos and, but I promised them I would never, like, leave him in a nursing home. And You know, so I got my dying dad. I don't know how to deal with that. I've never dealt with, like, you know, death so close. The abuse, you know, the addiction. Now, where do we get it? I was the main breadwinner. You know, going through all that was just a lot. And then what had happened was, you know, like, obviously when you're using, you're not taking care of your mental state. And, you know, looking back now and going through therapy, like, I realized I was in a narcissistic relationship. Because I blamed myself a lot, and I couldn't understand why I kept going back. Like, I'd leave, and I'd move right in with another guy. That codependency. Like, I don't know how to be alone. Like, Angel can't do it by herself. And so, like, yeah, I got to the point my dad died. I kind of went into, you know, just a deep, dark place. You know, because the addict that I am, when I'm using, I'm taking his morphine while he's suffocating in front of me. You know, and so, of course, you know, I get a call from the nurse to go to the hospice center. It's time, and I go to the dope boy's house instead. You know, but God's always showed up. Looking back, like, bam, right as soon as I walked in, I knew my dad had already passed. In comes my aunt's, she made it our family church. You know, my aunt's pastor right behind her, and then walks my mom. You know, so, like, looking back, I'm like, wow, like, that is just so awesome how, like without me even asking or knowing, I don't even know how he knew, you know, because, you know, I had grown up in a 12-step family. Like, my aunt was in recovery for a long, long time. And she's actually the one who took me to my first meeting after I lost my nursing license, and that humility that hits. Oh man, that humility. Oh, you know, especially being in, like, the professional field, like, and when you're a nurse, and, you know, I got red flagged everywhere, and, you know, it gets sent out to everybody's house, which you did.
Right.
So humility was like a huge smack in the face.
Right.
And I'm so grateful for what it is today, though. And I remember my oldest, she goes, Mom, you know what your problem is? And I was like, what? Like, I'm an addict. Like, I know. She said, no, Mom, you can't forgive yourself, and I don't understand why. And she said, you know, Mom, I forgive you, my siblings do, Grandma does. She goes, but most importantly, God does. So I think it's time you start to forgive yourself. And I went, and I was sick that night. The next morning, I went to the methadone clinic and started my journey. And, I mean, I managed to get a month sober before my grandbaby was born, which is the biggest miracle ever, because she wasn't supposed to have kids, and I was the only one there. My daughter had emergency C-section, and, you know, I have an opportunity to never let my granddaughter ever see me like that. Like, looking back, thank God for my sponsor for helping me point it out, you know, like, what was consistent, what did I miss, you know, and I'd be like, oh, I was just a failure, but no, like, okay, you know, relapse is part of addiction, or alcoholism, whatever. And, you know, so, but, you know, I tell my clients today, you didn't lose anything. I had all the knowledge in the world. I could quote the big book. I could tell you anything you wanted to know about nursing, but I couldn't apply it. And I prayed, and I felt myself start to calm down, and it was weird because I didn't even know. The worker is praying behind me. She didn't touch me, but she's praying, and I'm like, and I turn around and I'm like, you feel that? Like, what is that? And I was tingly from head to toe. And, like, she said, honey, that's the Holy Spirit. You finally filled your God hole. And I said, I know that's right. Now, was it always like that? No, it didn't last long. But I did the suggestions. I stayed sober and single for a year, and I started to do what everybody else did. You know, you want to be a winner, you hang with the winners. And that's what I did. And, you know, where I was at in Medina, like, they showed me that life wasn't over. Like, there is fun. Like, today I have played softball, which I'm not great at, but I was on a sober softball team. I was on a sober bowling team. You know what I mean? Like, I do things. We go to Cook's Forest. We do this. We do that. Amazing, like, opportunities open up, and I'm like, oh, but I don't have this, but I don't have that. And today, like, the biggest blessing that I have gained, like, I remember I got overturned to be able to move into my apartment because of my background, because of my recovery. And, you know, my sober support that went to, like, bat for me and say, hey, no, she's doing her thing. And, you know, I got my own place for the very first time, all on my own. And I can tell you, I was so institutionalized for so many years, I didn't know how to act. It was a 2-bedroom apartment, and I remember the first night, and my addiction kicked in. The first box I was going up, I'm like, I could do all the meth I want. I could work. And I called my sponsor immediately as soon as I got off the elevator. I'm like, listen, I use all those tools that they talk about. I finally listened to an IOP, right? Because I have, this huge war that I'm going up against, right? Which is my addiction. And how am I going to even know how to win a war if I don't know what weapons to bring? What defense I'm going to need. And so that is what is amazing about, the IOP or meetings or, sober support or whatever, celebrate credit, whatever you do. It's just take suggestions because it obviously worked for them. And, God one day just decided, it was time, and I got a phone call, and he said, look, I can't take care of him. It's your turn. Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
Because, I was already struggling to try to figure out how to get a lawyer, and, and then when I wasn't looking, I found my fiance. My picker's broke, okay? And so I don't pick anybody anymore. And, when it was time, it was time. And I had been single over a year, and I finally was happy by myself, and happy, being around, helping others, picking up girls, doing this, doing that. And, it was time. And it wasn't my time. And, I know now that, God already has my path laid out. And when I try to control it, that's when it gets a little rocky. And miracles have happened. Huge miracles. The promises have come true.
You've had some dreams that have come true.
Mm-hmm.
What dreams do you have still for the future?
So currently right now I did finish my preliminary CDCA. And I still can't get my certificate though because I'm trying to pay off my supervision fees. So as soon as that gets there, but I have faith that it'll work out. And just knowing that I have to do the footwork. Okay, if I am going to pray and pray and pray and I want miracles to happen, I also have to do things to make them possible to happen or be able to listen or look for signs, right? And so I want to do that. I want to then, further up into it. I would love to own my own sober living for women and children, because when I was getting sober and I had a possibility of getting my children, there's just not enough places. I mean, there is places, don't get me wrong, but they're so filled up so fast. And I don't, being a mother and having my kids stripped from me was devastating.
So there's darkness that occurs at times. Mm-hmm. What are some words of hope or inspiration that really have spoken to your soul during those times?
One of the first things my sponsor told me is no weapon formed against us is going to prosper. And, and I repeat it to myself. I repeat, constantly, the Serenity Prayer. I constantly, try to remember, so many people, when they've heard my story, they're like, wow, you're the strongest woman I know, this and that, da-da-da. And I'm like, yeah, right, whatever. People got worse stories, I don't understand. But when I finally realized that, hell yeah, I am a badass in recovery and one of the strongest women I know. It doesn't matter what you're going through, but there is light always. There is always tomorrow. I tell my kids, even, some of them that struggle with depression, do me a favor, just sleep on it. Just sleep on it. I mean, just call somebody. And if that person don't pick up, call another person. It took me 50 times one time to get somebody to pick up. You have made it this far, right? Yes. Yeah. And I always just try to look back and remember, and, I try to run through what I do have. I have 3 cars today. Never thought that would ever be possible. I couldn't even find a ride 20 minutes down the street, Yes. So, it's not always going to be easy. It's going to suck, and you're going to cry, and it's going to hurt. And that's why they say we trudge, right? The road to happy destiny. And there's gonna be battles, don't get me, I mean, if there's good, there's evil, right? So if there's positive, there's negative. There's always gonna be something that's gonna hit you, but I do try to pull something positive out of every situation. There's got to be something good coming out of this, right?
Yes.
Yes. So that's what I try to focus on today.
Absolutely. I have to say, you are a just a true example of continuing to battle and battle and battle, and that there is possibility of getting freedom. You definitely are a shining light. So thank you again.
Thank you for having me. Real people, real stories, real recovery.